Hey guys, welcome back to Critical African Thinkers. As you know, this is a place where we examine everything under the microscope of logic to ascertain what is most factual and logically consistent. So today's show, Zohran Mamdani is making everyone freak out, Democrats and Republicans. And it's a good thing. I mean, if a politician is making both parties, both establishment parties to freak out, then he certainly is doing something right. So in this conversation today, I'm going to be talking about my dislike and my disgust for politicians. I'm going to be talking about the politician or the only politician that I actually like, who is Zoran Mamdani at this point in time, why I like him, the things that he does that makes me like him. I'm going to be talking about how and why the Democrats hate him, what they and how they've been smearing him, then how the Republicans themselves have been smearing him, and then finally I'm going to talk about what is this guy actually about. Is it the way he's been painted? Is that the way he currently is? Right. Then after that, I'm going to open up the stream to Stanley and whoever else wants to have a conversation. So let's get right into the conversation. So firstly, I hate all politicians. I dislike all politicians from whatever political party they belong to. I think politicians are blood-sucking demons. I think that they are terrible. They are very bad people. They don't have the interest of the electorate at heart. They are only interested in power. They're only interested in perpetuating themselves in power, and they will do anything to further that goal. Right, the interest of the electorate, people that put them in power, is secondary to whatever they do. So, whatever political party you belong to, if you are a politician, just know that I dislike you vehemently. Right, but as it turns out, there's always an exception to everything. And at the moment, there is only one politician I don't seem to actively hate, that I don't seem to actively dislike, and that person currently is Zohran Mamdani. Now, you would see a lot of smears about this guy. In fact, after he won the New York the Democratic nomination for the New York mayoral race, there was a lot of hit pieces out on this guy. I mean, even on Substack, every day it was as if they just kept attacking him for no reason. So now, why do I like this guy? Why do I like him and don't like other politicians? I think he does two things that are incredible that other politicians don't do. Two incredible things that Zoran Mamdani does that other politicians don't do. One of them is that his ability to answer direct questions, and the other one is his ability to answer those questions substantively. Right? If you know anything about politicians, is that they would dance around the bush and never get to the point. They're never going to give you a straight answer to a straightforward question. They're going to duck, they're going to dive, they're going to do whatever it is but answer the question. Right? But this guy, what I've seen of him so far, is very, very willing to answer direct questions. He's not going to duck, he's not going to dodge, he's not going to dive, he's not going to try to bring in something that is irrelevant. He's going to give you a direct answer. Now, the only other politician who had that ability was 2016 Trump. 2016 Trump was a straight shooter. He would answer direct questions, whether you liked it or not, whether it was comfortable or uncomfortable. But that cannot be said of the Trump of today. The Trump of today is basically an establishment politician, and the way he answers questions shows that he does all the typical things that politicians do. He doesn't give a direct answer to questions. He doesn't give a direct answer to anything. He is going to dodge and so on and so forth. Now, the other thing I like about Zoran Mamdani is the fact that he gives substantive answer. Quite unlike Trump's concepts of a plan, this guy seems to have everything thought out very well. He seems to know what he's doing, and he seems to be able to come with facts. He seems to be able to lay out an argument in a way that is coherent. I mean, all the interactions I've seen him in, the guy has been a beast. He's very smart, he's very articulate, he's very well put together. He's researched all the things that he wants to do. So substantive answers and direct answers, and that just appeals to me because it shows that this person actually cares. This person doesn't care about power as much as they care about doing the right thing. And if other politicians do that, if they care about doing the right thing as much as they care about power, then I think there'd be better outcomes for societies from leaders, from political leaders. But that's not what you see in most of the cases. That's not what you see in many of the cases where political leaders just do what suits them, what suits their agenda. Now, considering the fact that this guy has been very, very successful in his political campaign. I mean, he's more like an upstart. He just came from nowhere and it's been very, 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 very successful. Definitely, there are going to be hit pieces on him. There are going to be attacks from him. Now, the first, which is very, very surprising for me, is the attacks coming from Democrats. He is running on the Democrat platform, and they are trying to tear him down. These are the same Democrats that have essentially capitulated to Donald Trump. They've accepted Donald Trump as the de facto, um, they've accepted him as, the strong man of the US, as the dictator of the US. They are not providing any useful opposition to Donald Trump, but they are very vocal. They seem to now have found their teeth when it comes to attacking one of their own, in the person of Zohran Mamdani. They found their teeth in attacking him, and they call him an elitist. They say he's an elitist, so it doesn't, he cannot relate to the people. I mean, how crazy does that sound? That Democrats themselves will call someone an elitist, and the other one that they're smearing him with is that he's an anti-Semite. So there was one interaction where he was asked, during the debate, all of the candidates were asked which country they would visit first, and most of them said, "Oh, Israel, Israel, Israel." And he said, "Well, he's not going to visit any country. He's going to be in New York City, and he's going to be addressing the needs of his people." I mean, I really don't understand why the mayor of a city has to visit another country as part of his, as part of his obligations to his people. I get that there are a lot of Jewish people in New York City, but just as Mamdani said, he's going to meet his Jewish constituents in New York City. He's going to address their concerns in New York City. He's going to meet them in their synagogues, and he's going to be a mayor for all people within his jurisdiction. He doesn't have to travel to a foreign country to do that. But you could see that the other politicians were falling over themselves, trying to show who likes Israel more, who loves Israel more, who wants to genuflect more for Israel, who wants to kiss the wall in Israel, who wants to kiss the asses of APAC and all those Israeli politicians and the Israel lobby. That's what they were going for. But this guy said, you know what? No, I'm going to be here in my city, and I'm going to be addressing the concerns of everyone in my city, whether they are Christian, whether they're Jewish, whether they're Muslim, whatever ethnicity they belong to. And that is the attitude that a leader should have. That you should put your constituents first, their needs first. That's what you should do, not go off to some other place that it isn't relevant to the people that you're a leader over, the people that you're leading over, right? So that totally doesn't work. The charge of anti-Semitism against him doesn't work. And the second thing, that during that conversation they asked him, do you think Israel has the right to exist as a Jewish state? Now, there are two parts to that question, right? He answered it. He said, well, he thinks Israel has a right to exist. And then they pressed him, do you think it has a right to exist as a Jewish state? And he said, I think Israel should have the right to exist as a state for all, a state with equal rights for all the people within its jurisdiction, right? You can't be an ethno state and be a democracy in the same sense. It doesn't make sense. It's a contradiction. Now, to that question, does Israel have a right to exist? It's a very silly question. It's a stupid question, because it is irrelevant whether someone thinks Israel has a right to exist, because Israel does exist. So if you say I don't think Israel has a right to exist, what does that do? Does it automatically mean that Israel doesn't exist or would cease to exist? It's a stupid question. It's kind of a gotcha question, right? And for politicians who dodge that questions, I don't understand why you are dodging it. You just call it out as a stupid question. It is irrelevant whether or not someone believes Israel has a right to exist. So the second part of the question, right? Should Israel exist as a Jewish state? Well, for me, no, because it's not just a state that you have Jews living there. You have Samaritans living there as well. You have Arabs living there in the state. You have Christians. You have Druze, and you have Jewish people, obviously. So what happens to the other people if this is an exclusively Jewish state? What happens to the other people? Well, we see and we know what's happening to the other people, especially the Palestinians, that they are living as essentially second-class citizens in their own country. Many of them do not have the rights to vote. Yeah, you can say that they're in West Bank and they're in Gaza, that they're a separate entity of their own, but the Palestinians don't have a country of their own. They are essentially Israeli sovereigns, and they have been denied the rights of citizens of Israel. They've been denied those rights to exist as citizens within Israel. So it should be a state for every people. It should be a state for everyone within its jurisdiction, where everyone has equal rights. Now, that's the smear that the Democrats have been smearing this guy, calling him an anti-Semite, calling him elitist, right? I mean, who is more elitist than the Democratic establishment? So for them to be calling someone elitist just shows how much divorced they are from reality. Now, going to the Republicans themselves, so these are the big guns. They're bringing out the big guns. Their charge is that this guy is an Islamist, that this guy is a communist, and then weirdly that this guy is also a Zionist. I mean, pick one. Is he a Zionist or is he an Islamist? Now, to tackle each of these points one after the other, the reason they say he's an Islamist is because, obviously, because he's a Muslim. There's really no other reason why they are smearing him as an Islamist. Apart from that, there has been no evidence that he supports terrorism or that he supports militancy. There's been no evidence that he does any of that. But just for the fact that he supports the Palestinian people, just for the fact that he supports, he's against genocide. He's called out Israel's actions. He said that if Netanyahu comes to New York City, that he's going to arrest him according to international law. Then that makes him an Islamist. This is quite close to the Democrats' charge of him being an anti-Semite, which doesn't make any sense, right? And then you go over to the claim that he's a communist. Now, this is a very famous one. This is the standard, or this is the go-to charge or the go-to label that right-wingers have for someone that they don't like, especially someone who is pushing progressive politics and policies. Now, Zohran Mamdani is saying is that he's going to make buses free in New York City. And he's outlined plans to be able to do that. He has outlined how he's going to be able to achieve all that. And it does make sense, right? But to right wingers, that means communism. That literally means communism. So they are smearing him as a communist to make him untouchable, to make him toxic to voters. But I don't think that voters are looking at all those people. Those voters, people are looking at what this man is saying, and they're impressed by what he's saying, and they're likely going to vote for him because of that, not because of any label that is a communist. And weirdly, I saw on Substack a few days ago, I didn't bother to read the article because it was just ridiculous, claiming that he's a secret Zionist. And I'm like, okay, guys, pick one. Is he an Islamist? Is he a Zionist? He obviously can't be both. I mean, if he's both, then he's combining the worst of two things, right? So which is it? So this is how the Democrats and the Republicans have been smearing this guy. They have been smearing him in different ways. Say he's elitist, he's an anti-Semite, a communist, he's all the standard things, that makes absolutely no sense. But what is this guy actually about? And why do I like him? I've outlined two of the reasons why I like him. One is that his ability to answer direct questions. He's not going to shy away from the questions. He's not going to beat around the bush. He's going to give you direct answers. And his ability for those questions to be substantive, for those questions to make sense, for them to conform to reality, to facts, to logic, right? That is a very beautiful thing. This guy is smart. This guy has outlined his policies. Quite unlike Trump's concepts of a plan, this guy is coming prepared. He is ready for governance, right? And this obviously is freaking out the establishment, is freaking out the Republican and Democratic establishment, which essentially are two sides of the same coin. They might seem as though they are fighting, they have different agendas, they have different interests, but ultimately the outcomes are the same. The outcomes are the same. They are both for the corporate world, right? They're both bought by by corporate organizations where they're just pushing the interest of corporate organizations. They are both bought by Israel where they're pushing the interest of Israel, and so on and so forth. So there is no really any material difference between the Republicans and the Democrats, and you can see that the establishment, you can see that in their treatment of this guy, this Zohran Mamdani, who, even though he's running under the Democrats platform, seems to be smeared as something that shouldn't be even touched. So it makes no sense. I see this guy as a turning point in American politics. Is for me is I don't like making this comparison, but I see him as kind of like an Obama figure, right? He has the presence, he has the charisma, he has the smarts, he has the intellectual capacity to be a force to be reckoned with, right? I mean, if he continues in this trajectory, then I see him ultimately becoming a president of the United States of America, and I think that should happen. I think this guy should be given a chance, right, to do what he has proposed to want to do. Anyway, there are some clips of him, of the interactions that he's been having, that I would like to react to just give some time for Stanley to come in. I will play those clips and react to them as we go. So Stanley, if you're around, I'll put the link to the show in the chat. Then you can come in and we can have the conversation. But first of all, let me share my screen. Yep. Yes. So yeah. So let's go.
Visit by a mayor of New York is always considered significant. Where would you go first, Mr. Cuomo?
Given the hostility and the anti-Semitism that has been shown in New York, I would go to Israel.
Mr. Tilson, where would you go?
Yeah, I'd make my 4th trip to Israel, followed by my 5th trip to Ukraine, two of our greatest allies fighting on the front lines of the global war on terror.
Mr. Mamdani.
I would stay in New York City. My plans are to address New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and focus on that.
Mr. Mamdani, can I just jump in? Would you visit Israel as mayor?
I will be doing, as the mayor, I'll be standing up for Jewish New Yorkers, and I'll be meeting them wherever they are across the 5 boroughs, whether that's in their synagogues and temples or at their homes or at the subway platform, because ultimately we need to focus on delivering on their concerns.
And just yes or no, do you believe in a Jewish state of Israel?
I believe Israel has the right to exist.
Not
as a Jewish state?
As a state with equal rights.
He won't,
Okay.
he
Not
won't
as a
say it
Jewish
has a
state.
right to exist as a Jewish state. Be very
And
clear
his
on
answer
that.
was no, he won't visit Israel.
I said that.
That's what he was trying to say.
No. Unlike
No,
you, I
you
answer.
never-
Unlike
you
you, I
never
answer
said
questions
no.
very
Okay.
directly,
All right,
and I want to be
you
very
answered-
clear. I
you answered.
believe every state should be a state of equal rights.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mamdani.
When you use words like accusing.
Okay, so you can see that interaction. It's one of the interactions that I was talking about, of him being asked the question about where are you going to visit. And to me, I don't see what's the relevance of visiting a foreign country. This is not even a governorship race. This is not even a presidential race. This is the mayor of a city. What is the relevance of visiting another country, right? And obviously, all of them have said, "Oh, it's Israel. It's Israel. It's Israel. We're standing with Israel. We're standing with Israel." APAC is doing very well. APAC is really, really working really, really hard to get these guys to just shill for Israel at every turn. But his answers are so on point. He answers the questions correctly. He answers them directly, that his concerns are going to be with his constituents, that he doesn't need to go out elsewhere to do all that.
The only when you use words referring to the only Jewish state in the world, like genocide and apartheid, when you call for divestment and all, that is inciting these mobs. And he says shared sense of humanity and all these nice sounding words, but he has a double standard, because if you search his Twitter feed, 15,000 tweets, Sudan, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia don't appear, yet the word Israel appears more than 50 times, the word genocide appears more than 26 times. So that tells you where his heart is.
Okay. Briefly, yes.
I am being smeared for echoing the same words as Israeli historians Amos Goldberg and Daniel Blattman. I am being mischaracterized on the stage for echoing the same words of a former Israeli prime minister, Ehud Olmert, who said recently, "What we are doing in Gaza is a war of devastation. It is indiscriminate, limitless, cruel, and criminal killing of civilians." I say these things because far too often we take what can be a place of disagreement and instead start to broach beyond that. And these kinds of characterizations, they are part and parcel of what leads to the dehumanization in our city, which is why an elected official in our own city has called for me to be deported. It cannot be disentangled from what's going on right now.
Yeah. So again with the smear that this guy is anti-Semitic because he criticizes Israel. Oh, so just for the fact that it's the only Jewish state and it's carrying out a genocide, which, it's at this point is uncontested, right? Just for the fact that you're stating that or you're pointing that out, how does that make you anti-Semitic? You're calling for actions that would prevent Israel from carrying out a genocide, to stop its war in Gaza, to stop the onslaught in Gaza, and yeah, that makes you an anti-Semite. And then they come with, but you don't talk about other conflicts. You don't care about other conflicts, mind you. Those same people are accusing him of not talking about other conflicts of Sudan and whatever else is happening in other parts of the world. They themselves don't talk about other conflicts. They don't say anything about other conflict. So essentially, they don't care. They're only using it to attack someone else. They don't care about other conflicts as well. If you go through their Twitter feeds, you are likely going to see a support for Israel. Are you going to see a support for other conflicts in other parts of the world where people are being killed? No. So it's a clear double standard, that a metric that they themselves are not keeping, they want it to apply to someone else.
Okay. Thank you, candidate.
This election is a choice between a candidate with a blue collar and one with a silver spoon. A choice between dirty fingernails and manicured nails.
When Mayor Adams, you just heard him come out and he said, soup, silver spoon. He talked about manicured nails to refer to you, right? I was looking at him. You can show him to everybody. What do you say to him?
I understand what he's doing. He's trying to distract from his own record. His is a record where he raised rents on more than 2 million New Yorkers by 9%. And he's considering another 8% increase. His is a record of raising the water bill to the highest it's been in 13 years, supporting Con Edison when they wanted to increase New Yorkers' gas and electric bills by $65 a month. I would much rather talk about me than I would about his record if I was him. And so that's what he's going to be doing over the next few months. And we will continue to remind New Yorkers what's on the ballot. It's affordability.
Experience matters.
So that's it. You see how he was able to expertly answer that question, that the Mayor Eric Adams is trying to distract from his own terrible records by smearing this guy as someone who has manicured nails and who is elitist, who doesn't understand the needs of the common man. Who of both of these people look like people that don't understand the needs of the common man? You have been the one in government, you've been the one in power. You have tasted what it means to have that much influence. You're shielded from the realities of the lives of everyday people, and you have the guts to say someone else is elitist. And then in the same breath, they're casting this guy as uncouth because there was a video of him eating rice with his hand. But shocker to you, there are a lot of cultures all over the world where people eat with their hands. There's some food that eating with your hands just gives it a different flavor. It gives it a different flavor. It's unexplainable. I can't explain it to you. You just have to experience it. So which is it? Is he an uncouth barbarian, or is he a blue blood elitist. It can't be both at the same time, just as they accuse him of both being a Zionist and an Islamist at the same time. You've got to pick one.
Matters. And I think inexperience is dangerous in this case. Mr. Mamdani has had a staff of 5 people. You're now going to run a staff of 300,000.
He never says his last name right, by the way.
He's never dealt with the city council. He's never dealt with the Congress. He's never dealt with the state legislature. He's never negotiated with the union. He's never built anything.
Mr. Mamdani.
To Mr. Cuomo,
Hey, Charles.
resign in disgrace. I have never cut Medicaid.
Hi, Stanley. Hey, how you doing? Welcome.
Oh,
to the
yeah, you
show.
did.
Station. Yeah. So I had started, just give my monologue.
Hey, Charles. Now this is me being all fancy.
Really, this is you being fancy. So I don't know how much of the conversation you listened to at this point, but do you want to jump in and give your thoughts? Hey, Stanley, are you there? Okay, so let's just continue. Get back to you.
I have never stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA. I have never hounded the 13 women who credibly accused me of sexual harassment. I have never sued for their gynecological records, and I have never done those things because I am not you, Mr. Cuomo. And furthermore, the name is Mamdani, M-A-M-D-A-N-I. You should learn how to say it. Donald.
Now, you just have to love the confidence of this guy. And it's he's just 33 years old. It's surprising that he's someone that's even younger than myself, and he's this confident, he's this articulate, he's this smart, and he's able to take on these establishment politicians. And that was a beat down of Cuomo in that conversation. Right? You want to smear someone like this when your own hands are not very clean, it's going to come back at you. I like the fact that he doesn't hold back. It just gives it the way it is. It gives a 2016 Trump kind of vibe, where you hit hard, but you hit good. Stanley, are you back? Are you good?
Yeah, I am. You know what? I think we kind of need someone on the left that can hit hard. I was just listening to a speech Trump did in Iowa last night, and he is already smearing Mamdani as a communist.
Yep.
So these guys, I actually think that there are a lot of people who are afraid of Mamdani, and I can tell you right now, if he gets elected and he does any decent type of job in New York, it's going to shift power in the Democratic Party.
Mm.
The leftists have been trying to get a candidate who had this kind of star power, intellect, and firepower for quite some time. So this is going to have an impact if he does a good job in New York.
Yeah, and that's the more reason why Democrats should be falling in line behind him. But they have been the ones,
that's not going to happen.
They have been the foremost attackers of this guy. I mean, these are people who have essentially capitulated to Donald Trump. They are providing no credible opposition to Trump, but somehow they found their voice when it comes to Mamdani. They're smearing him as an anti-Semite.
Well, there's a reason why the Democratic Party is bifurcated. There are the Democratic socialists like Bernie Sanders, and then there are the quote, normie Democrats that are like Kamala Harris, Joe Biden. And they have been going back and forth, kind of fighting for power for 10 years now. Mm-hmm. So the Democrats are as afraid of this guy as almost as much as they are of Trump.
But it seems they're even more afraid of him because they wouldn't say anything about Trump.
If he does a good job, he's going to shift the power balance in the Democratic Party.
And that's what is needed at this point in time, because the Republicans they've lost their damn minds, right? They're lost cause. Trump has completely taken over the Republican Party. And
well, the problem is the normie Democrats.
like Kamala Harris, people who supported Kamala Harris, they literally see the Democratic Socialists as too far left for their taste. And I somewhat agree with that. I tend to be more of a quote normie Democrat. So, but there's some progressive policies. The problem is though, and somebody showed me a clip that Mamdani did a while ago. Ultimately, the normie Democrats want something that the American public is not going to be able to stomach, and that's more workers owning the means of production. They don't. I mean, they are DSA or Democratic Socialists are capitalists, but they're the type of capitalists that want workers in control, more in control, or having an equal say in how the economy runs with the actual capitalists. And you know what? Normie Democrats don't want that.
So, you said you're more of a normie Democrat, right? So, what are the issues with the quote and unquote far left or democratic socialists like Mamdani?
Yeah, I wouldn't call. Well, the problem is they basically want something that American capitalism can't support. There is no way someone like an Elon Musk is going to want the workers owning SpaceX. Literally, under like, if we were to go Democratic Socialist tomorrow, there wouldn't be many billionaires.
Yeah, but
How
would that impact the economy? How would that impact the country?
Well, workers would have a share of a bigger part. Like unions would basically be co-owners of companies with the actual capitalists. And, workers and capitalists haven't always gotten along throughout history.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand the fear of business owners and capitalists. I'm a business owner myself, so I can understand that. But on the principle of what is ultimately good and better for society, right?
You know what? That is you hit the crux. Okay, what is good for society in a capitalist point of view is a free market where people basically support the market. If you go back and you read Frederick Hayek, he's the perfect example. Hayek basically believed that the market should not be tinkered with. People live to keep the market sustained and free.
No, but how does Stanley? How does the ownership structure of the enterprise interfere with the free market? The free market is about
Well,
are you able
no.
to provide services, goods and services? Are people able to?
Let me tell you how.
Okay.
Okay. Companies, corporations these days are accountable to shareholders. Okay, basically every company wants like maximum return on investment for the shareholders. Shareholders are technically the owners of the company. Okay, if your company is owned by workers, well, you know what? They may not care about, return on investment as much as, say, someone who is like a stock market investor. The goals of workers are not the same necessarily as those of capitalists. Workers probably don't care that much about profit. Of course, they want profit, but they're not going to make profit their number one goal.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, and I see the dangers in that, because if the business is not profitable, if
Yes.
profit is not central to it, then there's a likelihood it will collapse and everyone will be worse off for it. But can't
what if the workers want to put all the profits back into the company? They have a say in where the profits go. Profits may not necessarily go to shareholders. Profits may be plowed back into the company or into the company. And if it is a worker-owned business, it's entirely possible that, hey, all that money, screw the profit. It's better to plow it into the company for whatever reason. So that's where I'm going with this. Normie Democrats are a lot more into capitalism than democratic socialists are. Okay, the means of production in American capitalist are owned by either the owner of the company or shareholders.
Yeah, but I think the biggest fear with this workers-owned enterprise is a loss of control by the capitalist class.
Exactly.
That's their biggest fear, right? I don't think necessarily that the workers would want to run the company down, because it's in their own self-interest that the company succeeds.
Absolutely.
And you can see the contradictions between living in a society that is quote unquote a democratic society that runs a political system that it sees as democratic, yet frowns at a business system that is much more democratic. A worker-owned business enterprise is way more democratic, at least in principle, than a capitalist-owned one. The capitalist-owned one is more akin to a king. Is more akin to a king and his cabinet members just running the show, as opposed to the worker-owned, where everyone has a say, much like the electorate, right? The electorate have a say in, So it's weird to me that that Democrats or people who live in a quote unquote democratic society they make this flip. They've not been able to say, okay, this is a much more democratic system. Can we make it work? Can we take a look at it and see how it works? Imagine if the way capitalists are running their business today is the way the country should be run, is the way in terms of who gets to decide and whose interests are put forward. Supposing it's the interest of the politicians themselves that is front and center, that really matters. Supposing it's the interest of the president as opposed to what the people want. Do you think that people would be for such a system? People would still say that system is a democratic system, that it's a fair and just system, that it's a system where everybody's voice by their vote counts?
I'm not sure what you're asking. I mean, democracy and economics are not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying in terms of principle, the worker-owned business enterprise has a much more democratic layout.
Right, and that's exactly what capitalists don't want.
Yeah, so my point is, why would people who live in a democratic society, who like the concept of democracy, think that a more democratic work environment, business environment, is a bad thing? It's communism.
Okay, well, it's not, because I gave you an example of Trump calling Mamdani a communist, which is inaccurate. They demonize it. And all you got to do to snap Americans out of any socialist dream that they might have is talk about the Soviet Union. Communism failed. Okay, but communism is a form of socialism, but not all socialism is communism. But America doesn't know that. If you say socialist in America, that's akin to saying communist.
So it's essentially ignorance.
Well, it's ignorance. And then the other thing you need to understand is that a republic is a form of democracy. Instead of the people directly running the government, it's institutions that make up a republic. And, it's like parts of the republic are institutional, like, say, the Supreme Court. Those aren't elected officials. They are not. They are selected indirectly by the people. But once they get into office, the Supreme Court justices have office for life. They are in theory immune from politics. So we've got institutions instead of direct democracy. You know, we always say democracy, democracy, democracy. We have parts of the government that are extremely democratic, like the House, the House of Representatives. Those people are elected directly. That is the direct democracy part of the federal government. The president isn't elected directly by the people. He's actually selected by the electoral college. So people indirectly get the president into office, but it's actually the electoral college that does it. Used to be senators were elected by state houses. It became a direct democratic sort of process. Damn it! I think it was early in the 20th century, or I can't remember the date. So we are not a democracy per se. We are a form of democracy. So it makes absolute sense.
No,
Go and read.
I'll tell you why it doesn't make sense.
It makes perfect sense.
The statement that you are not a democracy but a form of democracy, it doesn't make any sense. If you are a form of,
all I can tell you.
Let me finish my point, Stanley. If you are a form of democracy, then it shows that there are different ways in which democracies are being implemented. It means you are a democracy, just a different form of it. There isn't a central form of democracy of which a standard form of democracy, and then what the US practices is sort of a deviation. It's like a set. When something is part of a set, it is part of a set. It is not outside of that set. It can't be a part of the set and not of the set at the same time. A form of
democracy it can. We are not a direct democracy like Rome. We have parts of the government. I literally just Charles. I know this stuff, Charles.
Direct and democracy are a compound word. You are a democracy.
Charles. All I have to say is do your homework. This is not. This is actually true. If it doesn't make sense, I can refer you to books.
It's not a function of books. It's a function of that you're saying. It's like saying a child is not actually a human. A child is a form of a human being. A woman is a form of a human being. A man is a form of a human being.
Well, let me help you out with this analogy. It's like saying humans are animals. Would you say your child is an animal? Most people want to make a distinction between animals and humans, but humans actually are animals. How often do you call your kid
it's irrelevant whether you want to call your child an animal. Scientifically speaking, we're animals. So
government is not a science. So if you were you like the logic part, don't look for logic in governments.
I'm not looking for logic. I'm literally saying
it doesn't make sense.
I'm literally saying what it is, because I keep hearing this, we're not a democracy, but we're a form of democracy, and it makes no sense. If you are a form of a democracy, then you are a democracy. It's just that the way that democracy is being practiced is unique or suited to America.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question. If I say communism is a form of socialism, does that make you a communist?
Communism is a form of socialism.
It is.
Then it makes the communist a socialist.
Well, no, it makes it a communist, and let me tell you why. Okay, communism is a form of socialism where the state plans the economy, much like Russia did and China does. A democratic socialist, for instance, another form of socialism, they don't want the government owning the means of production. They want people to own the means of production.
Yeah, but they're all forms of socialism.
Correct.
So,
but you don't call if you called a communist a socialist, that's too broad a category. You want to tell the form of socialism a communist is. That way you know that a democratic socialist and a communist are not the same thing.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. Which countries would you say have a democracy?
None.
None.
Not, well, hold on. None have a direct democracy.
Ah, so essentially they are different forms of democracy. That's what you're
Correct.
saying. So what have we been saying?
Okay, but it would be if you call America a democracy, if you know what you're talking about, you're going to ask what type of democracy. It's easier to call America a republic and know that it's a form of democracy. You're much more accurate calling it a republic instead of a democracy. It could be any type of democracy. It's a republic.
If I say the British the Britain is a democracy, right? They operate a parliamentary system. The parliamentary system is a form of democracy.
Correct.
Right. That doesn't mean
However,
not a
it would
democracy.
be hey, it's a hybrid democracy because it has a monarchy.
Yeah, but
You could call Britain a monarchy. You could call Britain a monarchy and be correct.
Yeah, it's a constitutional monarchy.
Yep.
Anyway, I think we've derailed from from the conversation.
Well, Mamdani, basically, the reason he wants a more socialist form. They want to call him a communist, but he is not a communist.
Yeah, have you seen the charge of anti-Semitism against him, that he's an anti-Semite?
I don't get that part. Well, actually, I do, but it's such a that's not going to stick.
Yeah, but how you said you get the part, so explain to me how you.
It was something when sometime years ago, and he's still fairly young, but when he was younger, he supported some Islamic charity, and the people, this charity had like ties to one of the Islamist groups. So basically, he like supported Palestine or something like that. Which in America these days, if you are pro-Palestine, then you are anti-Semitic. It's really people smearing him, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. So, of course, the charge makes no sense, even from the perspective of him supporting an Islamic charity. He's Muslim after all. He's not going to be supporting a Christian charity or a Jewish charity. So it makes no sense.
Well, basically supporting. Look, Trump basically has accused these protests on college campuses against Israel as anti-Semitic, which I think is taking it too far.
I don't think it's even taking it too far. I think it's nonsense because, yeah, it's nonsense. People have a right to protest, especially with what Israel is doing, right? You can't just come up and label it anti-Semitism. And this is why I think left wing. There is really little or no anti-Semitism from the left, because what you get from the left, these protests are a reaction to Israel's actions. Where you have the real anti-Semitism is from the right. That's where you have people who actually just hate Jewish people for no reason, right? That's where you have the gripers. That's where you have people who talk about conspiracy theories about Jews controlling the media, Jews controlling the financial system, having all those. The typical run-of-the-mill anti-Semitic things are found on the right. Left-wing people are more concerned with, Israel's actions and a reaction to Israel's actions, and I cannot term that as anti-Semitism.
Well, I'm going to tell you, because I actually live here, and I hate to make this analogy, and I'm going to say that, and I'm not going to make the analogy unless I have to. There's anti-Semitism on the left. And we live in America, and when I start talking about America, it may be more visible on the right, but believe me, it's on the left.
Okay, so can you explain how left-wing anti-Semitism expresses itself?
Well, let me tell you, Harvard, if you didn't keep up, they did some like self-investigation. They admitted to some anti-Semitism in policy or something like that. So, and I mean, this happened like since Trump took office 6 months ago. Literally, Harvard released a report saying that, hey, there were some practices that seemed to be anti-Semitic. So I don't
Right.
know that I have a better example than that.
No. When you say some practices, what?
I have no clue. I didn't read the report, but
No.
Harvard is generally considered a quote liberal bastion. That's a good example of. I'll read the report, or you can read the report, so you have specifics. But Harvard admitted to some practices that were anti-Semitic. They
So
are
I have to push
considered
back
a
on your-
leftist.
I have to push back more on your claim that there is leftist anti-Semitism.
It's not a claim. It's Harvard's claim.
No. You said something about you living in America, so you know that there's left-wing anti-Semitism.
Okay, I think you and I have had this argument before. I'm immersed in the culture, was born and raised in the culture. There may be some subtleties you can't get from where you are.
And those are the things I want you to speak to, not to the Harvard case where you can't even give me specifics. So talk to me about the culture. What are those subtleties within the culture that you have experienced or you think is anti-Semitic?
I bored out a little bit. You want me to? I mean, I've never say what you said again, because I didn't catch on you.
You said you are in the culture. You grew up in the culture. So there are some things you would understand that I wouldn't understand because of your experience, right? If to take, for example, I may not understand anti-Black racism as much as you do, right? Because you're there. So in this same instance, right, what are those things? What are those things that you have seen in the culture, those subtleties in the culture that are not so apparent, that might not be so apparent for someone like me looking from the outside in? That you can that say this is how left-wing anti-Semitism expresses itself in the culture.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to shift to an analogy, but to do that, you can agree that anti-Semitism is the same thing as racism, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, from my
wait, it's a form of racism.
Right. So what I'm going to say is that the left expresses its racism different than the right does. It's a lot more overt on the right. The left, and I have a friend of mine who's on my panel right now who uses the terms bigotry of low expectations. When I remember years ago when Obama was running for president, Joe Biden made the statement that he speaks very well, and that's something you don't necessarily say about a Black person who speaks very well. It comes off as patronizing. You remember that thing where Biden was being interviewed on that radio show, and he said, "If you don't vote for me, you ain't Black." Yeah. Okay, well, you know what? He's an old man. He probably meant it as a joke, but it's very patronizing. The left form of racism tends to be a bigotry of low expectations. Now, that's my personal experience with anti-Black racism. I'm less acquainted with the anti-Semitic stuff, but let me point out, I've often said that America is a racist country in ways that sometimes even white Americans don't understand. There is almost no way the left can't be anti-Semitic. And I think Harvard, its report, would back me up. I just don't have the details because I'm not Jewish.
Okay, so I believe there should be, it's the anti-Semitism on the left cannot be zero. It's impossible for
That's
it to be zero.
basically my point.
Yeah, but however, I am unconvinced by your argument
Well,
because
you don't have to be convinced, but
yeah,
you admitted that it can't be zero. That's
of course
basically my argument.
it can't be zero, but it doesn't mean that we're
Well,
okay
then
with that.
don't say it's only on the right and not on the left. If it's not zero, it means there is racism or anti-Semitism on the left.
Yeah, but you haven't been able
Even if
to.
it's a little
You
bit,
haven't been able to.
the left is not blameless.
Of course, the left is not blameless, but I am asking for forms, expression. You were able to give examples of how anti-black racism exists on the left, and those
Mhm.
examples made sense to me. I could, see and relate to them. But
Mhm.
for anti-Semitism, it's nothing. It's just an extrapolation of, if this can
That's
happen
exactly
to
what
black
it is.
people, then this can happen to Jewish people.
No, 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 no. I'm
Not the
not
same
Jewish.
thing.
Hold
Not the
on one
same.
second. I'm not Jewish, so I don't really pay attention, and it doesn't happen to me personally. What I'm saying is there is Harvard, which is, by all accounts, leans left. It did its own self-examination / investigation
Yeah, but
and
you
came.
don't know how they are
Let me
defining
finish, Charles.
anti-Semitism.
I don't know them, but I know how you can know them. Read Harvard's self-reporting. If you want concrete examples, read the Harvard report. I don't have concrete examples.
Okay, I'll take time to. If you have a link, you can share with me.
Hey, I have the time. I'll do it for you.
Yeah, I'd really
You're
love
a
to see.
busy man.
I'd really love to see that.
You know what? I will make a special effort. And who knows? It might be nothing, but it's a big deal if Harvard says, "Hey, there was some anti-Semitism in the policy."
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm just anticipating that the way anti-Semitism might be defined in Harvard's report might be quite, nonsensical anyway. But until I read
Well,
the
it's
report,
good enough to satisfy Trump.
of course, it's always good enough to satisfy. Like U.S. politicians are always shitting for Israel, so anything that paints the U.S. as anti-Semitic. But do you know the funny thing? If that report had said that the U.S. was racist against black people, right? Trump would deny that report. Trump would fight that report. Trump would diminish that report. But somehow he's going to essentialize the report that says the US is anti Semitic. It's
Well,
weird.
but see, Charles, this is one of the other weird things. Um, Jews in America hold a lot more power, political power, economic power than black people do. And I think they're probably more numerous also demographically. Racism is not, all
No,
racism is
I
not
don't think you have,
like,
I don't think you have more Jewish people than black people. Is that what
oh,
you're
I'm
saying?
sure I just don't know the demographic.
No, I don't
But
think
what
so.
I'm saying is, even if you take demographics out of it, they have a lot more power than blacks do. It is a lot harder to ignore anti-Semitism when you've got big billion-dollar donors to your political campaign. Blacks don't have that much political power.
Yeah.
It's arguable that we have a lot of power in the Democratic Party, but I'm not even sure that holds. There are pockets like here in Georgia, blacks had a lot of political power, but I think if you look nationwide, it's not chopped liver, but we don't control the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I get. Anyway, so is there anything else you wanted to talk about on this Mamdani stuff? Just your thoughts on the whole thing.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
So I said, is there any other aspects of this Mamdani thing that you wanted to talk about?
No, I'm just I guess the only thing that I really wanted to say, and it happens a lot, in my John Galt universe, there was somebody who did a show on Mamdani, being Asian and, Muslim. And my response was, you know what? Being Muslim is the least interesting thing about Mamdani's candidacy. It's really what could happen in the Democratic Party. That's going to have much more impact, or could have potential impact, more so than his religion.
Yeah. True.
So now we know a little bit about brown people racism. Muslim equals brown skin.
Yeah. And there was talks of him being deported back to Uganda because that's
oh my Lord! I don't think they're going to be able to do that. He's been a U.S. citizen like since he was a kid. So essentially the denaturalization process. I've looked actually at the statutes. He would have had to have done something fraudulent on the application for naturalization. If you commit some sort of fraud or lie about a criminal record or something, when you go through the application process, they can strip you of citizenship. I don't think he's in that category.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Anyway, I think there's I was seeing something of recent. That will be topic for another conversation, though, about the Supreme Court and how they are basically giving into Trump's decimating of the U.S. Constitution as regards this denaturalization and how people become American citizens. So
I
really
think Trump's going to lose. I think on the 14th Amendment, the birthright citizenship stuff. But on the Voting Rights Act sort of stuff, look, Justice Thomas has been wanting to do things like turn over affirmative action, turn over parts of the Voting Rights Act, literally since he worked for Ronald Reagan. I think it was Reagan. He was like in the Solicitor General's office or something like that. So the goals, they're not actually giving in to Trump. They're this conservative majority, especially Clarence Thomas and Alito, look, they aren't giving in. they are embracing.
All right, Stanley. Thanks for joining the show today.
Well, I enjoyed it.
It's been a good one. Good sparring with you on the democracy point. Anyway,
well, I will get that Harvard report and look at it and get back to you.
All right, I'll be expecting. So that'll be all for this show today. Guys, like, share, subscribe, and I will see you in another live stream. It's going to be bye for now.